to face Carlos Condit.
Joe, you said it perfectly earlier tonight. It is not often that we are blessed to have the true top two fighters compete for the belt inside the octagon at any weight class. But tonight, we have that in Carlos Condit and the longtime champion, George St-Pierre.
Yeah, the stars truly have aligned for this moment. This is, and do you hear that, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah,
they just showed a picture of George St-Pierre on the screen and everybody went crazy. Carlos Condit is a real seasoned veteran at this point, having been a champion himself in the WEC, having victories over top flight competition. Carlos is ready for this shot, and this is something that he has truly worked for his entire career, focused on this one man who has been at the top for so long.
One thing to keep in mind, it was the right knee that was injured on George St-Pierre's body. He's an orthodox fighter, so while he can't really have that front leg exposed, which is bad, what we might see is Carlos Condit try to work the front leg and force him to put the weight on the right knee.
Well, also, Carlos likes to throw this elliptical kick that attacks the knees.
Yes.
He throws that kick a lot. It attacks the upper thigh and extends the knee. So we'll be curious to see if he does that. That usually would apply to the front leg, which is George's left.
Exactly.
But we'll see if George switches positions, which he sometimes does. The real question is, what is that knee going to be like in competition? Not in training, but in competition. And will that factor into his mind?
And I wonder, too, will Carlos Condit freely kick tonight against George St-Pierre, with George St-Pierre being the greatest takedown artist in UFC history?
Well, one of the things about Carlos is not afraid to fight off his back. He has an outstanding guard, and he's not afraid to fight off his back because his sweeps are very good as well. His takedown defense is very good. He's a 100% complete fighter. Both guys have been off for a long time, which is also very interesting because ring rust could play a part in this fight, but it could play a part for both fighters. Carlos decided to wait and not take a fight and defend the interim title, wait for George to rehab his knee. So Carlos has not fought for almost as long as George.
Over 18 months for GSP, 9 months since Carlos Condit became the interim champion, defeating Nick Diaz. It is our main event of the evening for the undisputed crown.
I knew that this would be the biggest challenge of my whole career, because not only I have to fight the toughest opponent I ever fought, I have to come back from a very bad injury.
We don't know how significant the damage was to that knee.
I don't want to come back and get a beating. You know, if I come back, it's because I'm ready.
I want to fight the best GSP there's ever been and beat that guy.
It's never good to get injured, but I truly believe it's going to make me come back better and stronger than I was before.
I guarantee you the sound that the arena makes when George St-Pierre enters the octagon is going to be absolutely deafening.
I'm back better than ever.
Until he's beaten by somebody, he's the champion. I'm the contender. No, I have to go in there. I have to take it to him. I have to win this fight.
Continuing the pressure. It is all over!
He is a man on a mission. He is a focused guy who is absolutely obsessed with defeating George St-Pierre.
I possess things that you can't measure: guts, heart, determination, tenacity. That's going to make the difference in this fight.
Oh! Absolutely right! He's out!
You know, you want a fight to make the hair stand up on the back of your neck? It's going to be this one.
Familiar sounds of Rage Against the Machine as the interim champion Carlos Condit makes his way into the arena.
Carlos Condit has not been submitted since June of 2006. An interesting sidebar to this fight. These men have been in the same camp down at Jackson's, but they always trained on the opposite side of the gym because they knew this day was forthcoming. So Greg Jackson totally removed himself from the equation for both corners. And Carlos Condit's lead trainer was Mike Winkeljohn, who he has been training with since age 18.
Mike Winkeljohn is the unsung hero of that Jackson camp.
Yeah, ask John Jones.
Yeah, I think that, you know, Greg Jackson is an awesome trainer, don't get me wrong, but I think Mike Winkeljohn doesn't get nearly enough credit. He is really an amazing striking coach. Was a kickboxing champion himself and has a very, very intelligent approach to training his fighters. And you've seen the results with John Jones. We've also seen the results with Carlos Condit.
Also in preparation for this fight, Carlos Condit brought on 6-time world champion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Kyle Tao.
Yes, he did, and he's an amazing, amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist and a small guy who's very technical. And in response, George St-Pierre brought on Braulio Estima, who's also a world champion and also one of the very best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artists on the planet Earth. Carlos Condit is an incredibly well-rounded fighter and very, very dangerous in every single position. He's very dangerous off of his back, has a ton of victories with arm bars and triangles off of his back. He's got knockout victories standing with punches like Dan Hardy, knockouts with knees like Dong Hyun Kim. He's a beast.
And what he has done in the 9 months waiting for this night to finally come is he worked on more size, more mass, lots of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He worked his physical strength, his power, and his athleticism. But the real key will be movement, angles, and avoiding the takedowns of one of the greatest champions to ever grace the octagon. George Rush St-Pierre, 20,000 plus in attendance. They are all on their feet and he's ready to welcome the hero.
Sorry, Mike, he's noticeably physically more muscular.
Yep.
You can really see the results of that strength and conditioning program. And Carlos is also very well known for his conditioning. Always in shape.
The interim champion against the welterweight champion.
If you're a mixed martial arts fighter, there's two people that you should see fight in two different places. Anderson Silva in Brazil and George St-Pierre in Montreal. Because you really don't know what a crowd can sound like until you hear 22,000 people lose their minds. Like right now, as George steps into the arena. Take your headphones off, man. Listen to this.
Just a thunderous roar for GSP, who is so popular not just in his home province, but the entire country of Canada, that in 2010, when the Canadians won the Olympic gold medal in Vancouver and Sidney Crosby scored the game-winning goal, George St-Pierre was named Canadian Athlete of the Year.
You know why? Because he can kick all those dudes' asses.
That's a great point.
George St-Pierre, he's not just a great fighter, he's a great martial artist, and that's one of the most honorable and admirable aspects of who George is. He's constantly improving himself in martial arts. He is a true martial artist. When he is not training for a fight, he's training his skills, he's training his character, and he embodies and epitomizes the mindset of the true martial artist, the true Budo mindset.
He took this time to help clear his mind and heal his body as he steps into the United States Marine Corps Prep Point. GSP in the Prep Point. Go to UFC.com/Marines to see what happens when elite UFC fighters meet elite four fighters, and we have two of the most elite UFC fighters ready to battle it out for the undisputed welterweight title.
And he's brought John Danaher in his corner to handle his main coaching aspects, which I think is a great move. John Danaher is one of the most brilliant guys in martial arts and a fantastic Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor. Along with, you see Phil Nurse behind him, who's an excellent Muay Thai trainer, and of course, Firas Zahabi, who has been his main trainer for years now.
Danaher, a 4th degree black belt, and you'll love this quote from John Danaher. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a chess match with pieces of your body on the line.
That's a perfect way of putting it.
It is, right?
Danaher's a brilliant guy and a brilliant tactician to have in the corner because he has a very intelligent, tactical, no-nonsense approach to the action.
The champion, George "Rush" St-Pierre. Look at how big he is. Look at the legs.
Yeah, he's done a lot of strength and conditioning and a lot of gymnastics in preparation for this. And he believes that that has made him a much better fighter, and that having this time off because of the injury has actually made him better. Made him focus on different aspects of his physicality.
Carlos Condit has never been more ready for a fight. He's going to try to knock off the champion tonight. Our tale of the tape for this, our main event of the evening, is brought to you by Bud Light. Here we go. Carlos Condit calls himself the challenger. He is 28. The French-Canadian is 31. The reach is identical, although Condit, the taller fighter. With our official introductions, once again, here is Bruce Buffer.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. Brought to you by the United States Marine Corps, the few, the proud, the Marines. Sanctioned by the Quebec Combat Sports Commission. Commissioner Michelle Hamelin. Our 3 judges scoring this contest at Octagon side are Sal Diamato, David Therian, and Tony Weeks. When the action begins, our referee in charge of the Octagon, Yves Levine. This bout is sponsored by Bud Light. Here we go. The all-new Dodge Dart and Muscle Farm, fueling athletes safely. And now, this is the moment UFC fans around the world have been waiting for. Live from the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It's time! 5 rounds for the undisputed UFC welterweight championship of the world. Introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner. This man is a mixed martial artist, holding professional record, 28 wins, 5 losses. He stands 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighing in at 169 pounds. Fighting out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, USA. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the former WEC welterweight champion and the interim UFC welterweight champion, the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit. And now, introducing his opponent, fighting out of the red corner. This man is a mixed martial artist, holding a professional record, 22 wins, 2 losses. He stands 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighing in at 170 pounds. Fighting out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the reigning, defending UFC welterweight champion of the world, George "Rush" St-Pierre.
It is deafening in here.
Quand t'as déjà tout le temps oublié mes commandements tout le temps. T'as déjà do it now. Je suis gaffe maintenant. Go.
Carlos Condit says, I can go into a dark place when I fight in the octagon. A man possessed to knock off one of the greatest champions of all time tonight, George St-Pierre.
Step back, please. Thank you.
Welterweight title on the line.
Are you ready, Mr. Condit? You ready? Fight! fight!
Here we go! Tonight's clock brought to you by Hitman Absolution. Available November 20th. Black trunks for GSP. Red and white trunks for Condit. The right knee was the one that took the ACL damage. An injury that has finished careers in the past. Pushing forward early, George Rush St-Pierre. Condit loves to throw hands followed by a kick and then spin out of trouble like he did against Nick Diaz. George switched his stance for a moment there.
Yeah, he did, and that opens him up for that elliptical kick, which Carlos loves.
And George looks absolutely huge for this fight. This might be the biggest we've seen him, Joe.
Yeah, his legs especially. He's done
it looks like an NFL running back.
Yeah, a lot of strength and conditioning, which, by the way, before he was injured, he said he didn't do.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, Joe, and you wonder if we might not see the greatest George St-Pierre ever to be able to have the time away. Although off a bad injury, he has really worked diligently to make himself even more powerful.
Well, one of the things that we said, it's the most difficult thing to do is to maintain the highest levels, to maintain that focus and intensity. And sometimes when you step away, you can become refreshed. Carlos just landed a nice jab there, Mike.
He said that he might have lost a little fire, and this helped get him back. He looks for the first takedown of the night.
George is shooting,
and he's got it
down. He's got to be careful. Mission control here. Condit does not have the right arm trapped, though. As he goes for mission control here, he's really just kind of biding his time. He needs to control that right arm of George's in the form of an overhook before he really can effectively attack with that position.
Condit has not been submitted since 2006.
Armbar attempt by Condit, rolled out of it is George. But George has to be careful here because Carlos will attack.
George has not been defeated since 2007.
Carlos
the upset
spinning
by Matt Serra.
Spinning towards his left. George is trying to pass now. Now he's in half guard.
He's halfway there, Joe.
Carlos has already shown that he's dangerous off his back bike. He regains guard. And George is trying to rough him up from the top here.
Condit does a nice job getting back to guard.
Yes, he does, but he's pulling on the head. And as George pulls on the head, it's called a can opener. It's a way to open up a guy's guard, but it opens you up for arm bars. As you commit to pulling on that head, if a guy's really nasty off his back, he can catch an arm bar from that position.
I like one of the pre-fight quotes going into this championship matchup. How do you rebuild the perfect fighting machine? It started with 5 months of rehab in Southern California as St-Pierre turns it up early. Where there was, George admitted, a dark time where he thought it might be over. But he persevered, and he's here tonight in top position.
See how he's pulling on that head there?
Yep.
Now this can open him up to an armbar, but it's a very small window. See it right there? The small window, man. And Carlos is going high with those legs. Remember how quickly Vitor Belfort snatched that armbar on John Jones. That's how quick it can happen.
Good pace by St-Pierre.
And don't think Carlos didn't know he was going to be in this position. I'm sure he's well prepared for this. And as George keeps reaching for that can opener.
Takes a look at the clock. Under a minute on the clock here in the first round. GSP 22-2. Overall 16-2 in the UFC. Looking to move to 10-2 in championship fights. Big right hand.
Good shots being landed by George.
He's being bullied here by George as he embraces the grind of this wrestling that is surpassed by no one in UFC history. To the body. Again, he looks at the clock. 15. Nice elbow.
Again, spinning for that armbar, and George counters.
Final seconds of the round.
Condit back to his feet, cut though.
Big round for the champion.
Condit's cut bad, Mike.
That was that late elbow, Joe.
But it's in the hairline, I believe. I don't think it's in a dangerous area at all. The forehead bleeds a lot.
They're putting it by the eye, look.
Yeah,
it's by the eye, actually, yep.
I thought it was in the hairline. Yeah, it's right there. That's not a good spot. That's a big cut already.
And that can roll down and impede your vision.
Got some water for him?
Was the left elbow of GSP that did the damage. His stitch works on the cut.
Let's see, and it's right at the end.
Boom.
That's it. That's the one that did it. You immediately see it open up. One more look here. Right there, and right away you see the blood flow.
6 straight title defenses for St-Pierre. Round 2. Condit on a 5-fight win streak. Keep an eye on the cut. There's that punch-punch kick combination that Condit loves.
Nothing there, though.
Nope.
Great defense by George. Nice jab by George.
George's a sensational striker as well. In fact, that is his base, is that full contact karate.
Easily moves away from those shots again.
Just amazed how big St-Pierre is right now.
He clipped him with the right hand there. George goes for the head kick.
Jab was so effective against Josh Koscheck.
Good right hand by George. You know what? Carlos is hesitating here, Mike. You see him thinking about pulling the trigger, and he doesn't. And then George does.
Well, you had said before he didn't mind being on his back. That's before he took an elbow over the right eye.
Well, you know, there's levels to everything. You can be confident off your back with certain people, and then you get a guy like George on top of you.
Man, he's headhunting too. The chant of GSP.
Carlos needs to gain George's respect, and backing up and employing the same strategy that he did in the Diaz fight is not going to get that.
George
nice
said many years ago, Joe, he wants to be the man that brought MMA to a different level.
Good combo there by Carlos, though. Nice jab. Now he's opening up. This is what he's got to do. He's got to back George up a bit, and when he does, George is probably going to try to take him down. Nice shot to the body by Carlos. Now he's opening up. Oh! Beautiful timing with that right hand.
Up on his toes. Good movement by St-Pierre. Condit trying to steal this round back.
Condit's bleeding from the nose now as well.
That was that right hand counter a moment ago. Midway point of round 2. Fight scheduled for 5 5-minute rounds.
One of the aspects of George St-Pierre's game that's lost on some people is the fact that because he's so good at wrestling, it makes everyone hesitate before they throw shots. And you're seeing that with Carlos. After being taken down that first round, he hesitates because he's worried about this. And immediately George passes into half guard and a hard elbow to the same cut. And it's opened up even more now. Now it's nasty.
St-Pierre holds wins over UFC champions Matt Serra, Matt Hughes twice, BJ Penn twice, and Sean Shirk. He's trying to take out the interim champion here tonight. And a big left hand.
He's got to be careful here, though. He's rolling. Carlos is rolling on that leg. He's got to sprawl.
Powering through it, St-Pierre. Carlos.
Man, look at all the blood on the canvas, Mike. This is getting to be a mess. That cut's horrible.
And it's going to make both men slippery. Make it extremely difficult for someone to finish this fight with a submission.
Well, not necessarily. It makes it easier with chokes.
With chokes, yes.
Big
if he can hold on,
there.
right?
Yeah. If you can get the back, sometimes it helps when a guy's bloody.
How about from the top, Joe?
No, not from the top. No, it's not going to help George. The only way it's going to help is if he gets his back. But if he does get his back,
slide under, right?
he can slide the arm under sometimes when the guy's protecting the chin. But it does make it more difficult for triangles and things along those lines.
And this is looking like Kenny Fleury and Sean Shirk.
There he goes with elbows here. Elbows here from the bottom by Condit. And he's got to do more of those. He's got to get George's respect from the bottom here. And he can do that from the bottom. He's got a nice long reach. And he's very good at elbowing off of his back. And if he can cut George from this position and do some damage, he can sort of change the course of this fight.
Condit's up, but he eats a punch. Since late 2009, when Carlos joined Mike Winkeljohn full-time, he is undefeated. What a start to our main event.
Have a seat, Carlos. Big breath. Big breath. Get that breath back. Big breath. Get that big breath. Give me 2 big breaths, Carlos. Another big one. Carlos, you cut him. All right? You cut him. You're in his head.
You got it? Écoute-moi, George.
Call Rabbit.
Don't worry. C'est correct, c'est une petite affaire. T'as bien fait, t'as défendu contre Lenny Bar. Excellent. Excellent. T'as tout fait de bien. Mais reste pas en dedans et échanger. T'as échangé une fois ou deux en dedans. On fait plus ça, là. Niaise-moi pas, là. J'aime pas ça.
His face is getting clear.
Yeah, we're getting really slippery right now, so.
Hunter leg very tight. The tight spots in his leg. Keep your life on it.
You're hurting him standing up. Go get him, Carlos.
And there's a brilliant right hand over the shoulder by George. And there's another one, catching Carlos coming in. And here's the double leg. Catches that kick, drives, gets to half guard, and opens that cut up even more.
Round 3. Sold-out Bell Center in the hometown of GSP from the south shore of Montreal, St. Isidore. But Condit from the bottom was able to cut St-Pierre.
Nice inside leg kick by George.
Spin.
Telegraphed.
Condit.
That's a nice leg kick!
Oh, he got it! Condit with a big kick to the head! Condit swarming St-Pierre!
George is in big trouble!
Condit on top! The big head kick! Now to the body!
George is swollen up, Mike, badly! Carlos is gonna get his back! George is trying to get back up to his feet!
And you talked about being slippery, Joe.
Full guard now. And now it's Carlos's turn.
Look at the swelling on the forehead of St-Pierre.
Big elbows by Carlos Condit. George is trying to move here, Mike.
The shin to the forehead from Condit and another elbow. George is rocked. He's out, though. We got ourselves a fight, ladies and gentlemen. How good is this? We're all back to even now, Joe.
That might be more than even. I think he hurt George a lot more than George hurt him.
Big right hand by St-Pierre.
George
picks him up, throws him down. St-Pierre 3 for 3 on his takedowns. He's landed 1 in each round.
Carlos is trying to secure Kimura. Going for the high guard here.
That's the hardest George St-Pierre has been hit since Matt Serra finished him many years ago.
Well, we don't know how badly he's hurt and what happens when he goes in between rounds. Carlos is rolling for the armbar here. There's still plenty of time in this round. This round's half over.
And we have the championship rounds ahead.
There's a big swelling over the right eye of George where that kick landed. And Carlos is targeting it now with punches. Carlos is going with the body triangle now from the guard, which is, it limits your offense substantially, but it allows you to squeeze down on the guy's body, makes it hard for him to breathe, and he's not attacking with jiu-jitsu from his back anyway. He's like trying to hit with elbows and punches from the bottom.
St-Pierre, only the second Canadian to hold a UFC belt, the other being Carlos Newton in this same division. The Ronin. St-Pierre seems to have recovered here, Joe, and he's using his strength advantage again.
You know, it's hard to tell because they're on the ground. When you see how a guy moves standing up, it's a kind of a different thing when he's got to use his balance.
Condit trying to get up.
Back up to his feet. George has got his hands locked, though. Carlos is going for a ride. But Carlos is reaching down for the Kimura, so George has to be careful about that.
George looking for the high cross.
See how Carlos has that locked up, Mike. And so because of that, that's keeping George from attacking. And George breaks it free and gets him down. You know, how do you score this round? Because George is on top pounding him, but I think Carlos did the most damage.
Well, the only times GSP has been defeated in his career, they were both first-round stoppages. And George St-Pierre is 9-0 in fights that go the distance.
Turning for that, look at that, he almost sweeped him. Turning for that armbar.
Serra and Hughes with 1 second left in the round back in 2004.
George steps over, and now he's in half guard again, Mike.
In what George called the most important fight of his life.
He's in half guard here, and he's triangling the leg. And see how he's doing that, Mike? That keeps Carlos from sneaking that leg out and going to full guard. But he's trying hard.
He had GSP in trouble early.
You know, how do you score this round? It's a very interesting round.
Control for GSP.
But
big shot for Condit. We are headed to the championship rounds. We got ourselves a fight.
Bravo, George. Bravo.
Very good, George.
Respire, respire, George.
Rest.
Respire. Écoute-moi bien, George.
You did good,
On
George.
respire. Écoute,
Just
George,
relax.
c'est un petit pied à la tête.
They got to put some ice on that swelling.
Listen to me, you got to hit him more in the head.
Gotten some ice on that yet.
Vraiment loin.
You got to keep the distance and keep far from him.
Tu le mets au sol, tu fais un match de lutte. Il reste 2 rounds.
You still got 2 rounds, so pace yourself. This is the 4th round.
Il a gagné une peut-être. Tu le mets sur le dos, tu le défonces.
He maybe won 1 round.
Let's take a look at that kick to the head. He came up from, look at this, brilliant job by Carlos Condit. And George was legitimately staggered there. That was a big kick. And they never got ice on that swelling, Mike. They should have got an end swell on that right away. Because if that gets bigger and he drops down by the eye, that could really interfere with his vision.
And you see the bruise on the forehead. A hematoma coming on the right side of the forehead. 2 kicks thrown early by Condit. Round 4.
Condit can look at that and see his handiwork.
Switches his stance to southpaw. George landed 1 takedown in the first round, and again he got it.
Yeah, that one snuck through again.
1 in the second and 2 in the third.
And George just lands one of his own.
Anderson Silva watching this fight very closely with Lyoto Machida. Both men earned UFC belts in 2006, but George lost his first defense against Serra. Anderson with 10 total defenses.
George got him on the ground again, turning the corner, side control.
George looking for a 7th, Joe.
George's got to keep that right hip out. Yeah. Immediately, Carlos snuck that hip in and got the right knee into play, and now he's in half guard. George had that opportunity to stay in side control there. He lost it. George doesn't mind being on top in half guard, though. In fact, Randy Couture preferred being in half guard for ground and pound because of the fact that you can hold on to the guy's leg and keep him in position. For grappling, you know, for straight submissions, it's not a good position. but for control and ground and pound it is.
Condit is no stranger to 5-round fights. He had the one recently with Nick Diaz, but he was scheduled for 5-minute rounds 5 times in the WEC. Never had to go the distance in those.
Good shots from the bottom by Carlos Condit here. I like how he's attacking from the bottom. He's making George work here. These are good shots. He's going under, he's going over, elbows, punches, constantly attacking, keeping one foot on the hip too, Mike. And George tried to step over that, which he did. But Carlos will push down that knee and slide his right leg up and back, or left leg rather, up and back into play.
Condit said, GSP is the champ until I beat him. I am the placeholder. Huge advantage in top position for GSP.
This is the championship rounds of a grueling fight so far. George steps over again.
Carlos doing an amazing job, Joe. Every time GSP gets a half guard, he gets those hips back underneath and closes his full guard.
His guard's excellent. Now he goes mission control. Now this is good because he's got that arm pinned down. He got up, lost the position, trying to hold the arm. And George smartly turns away from it.
Uh-oh. Looking for the knee bar.
He's looking to hold on to that leg. George has got all his weight down on it, though. It's okay right now.
It's the left knee, not the right knee.
Triangle attempt here. George's got a posture up here.
And he's out.
And
there's where being slippery comes into play.
Certainly.
Under 2 on the clock in the 4th.
Also being trained well, so he understands what not to do in that situation.
Supernatural talent and athleticism helps, right?
That all helps. And being gorilla strong.
Yeah, the spider. Wonder what he's thinking with George being so big in this fight. The greatest of all time, Anderson Silva.
Carlos gets back to his feet. But George has his hands locked.
And that cut over the right eye of Condit, Joe.
Reversal by Condit.
Is open again, and the blood going into the eyes of Condit, knee on belly.
Brilliant reversal by Condit. Oh, George almost reversed him, but he got stuck against the cage.
Right back down.
You know, it's the wrestling of George St-Pierre. It's just so sensational. It saves him in so many spots.
5 for 5 with his takedown.
He's just able to out-grapple guys consistently. And Carlos is attacking that Kimura again, but he can't hold on to it.
Joe, we had said it earlier, when the stars align and you get a matchup like this, we are truly blessed, and what a matchup it has been.
It is everything we thought it was going to be.
And more so. Final 30 seconds of the 4th round.
And it's really being decided so far by George's grappling. Although the most exciting moment came from Carlos' striking. Carlos again with feet on the hips.
Final seconds of the round.
Again, back to his feet.
Big breath, Carlos. Big breath.
This is
Get that
awesome.
breath back.
Mike Winklejohn.
Give me 3 big ones. 3 big breaths, Carlos. That's all I want. Breathe, breathe. Gotta have your breath back for this round. You will. Carlos, you're in great shape. Breathe. One more time. All right, Carlos. We need this round. You gotta put him out. We gotta put him out. Do not be lazy against that cage. Get off first. Give me some stabs and some ups. You got it? Get off first. Don't be lazy against the cage. You got it? We gotta knock him out, Carlos.
Encore une fois. Il reste une ronde.
Just one more round left. Let's go.
Il faut qu'il te mette KO, Jean.
You gotta go. You gotta finish the
Il
fight.
reste 5 minutes.
5 minutes to go.
Il reste 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Maintain the breathing.
5 minutes, t'es champion du monde.
5 minutes for the world champion.
Props to our translator, Derek, who speaks Portuguese and French.
He's a worldly man. 7 successful defenses at 170 for Hughes. St-Pierre looking for his 7th tonight, which would be 7 in a row. Matt Hughes 9-3 in championship fights. George St-Pierre 9-2 going into this battle. So if you want to truly claim that you are the greatest welterweight champion in UFC history, you can do so tonight by going 10-2 in championship fights and surpassing Hughes, the Hall of Famer.
Beautiful combination there by GSP. The left hook with the right leg kick. Now Carlos is opening up.
Winkle John, the world champion kickboxer, said you have got to leave it all in there and finish him here. Sure, he feels they are down 3-1.
Oh, nice spinning back kick by Condit. Didn't get full extension on it.
You got to talk about, Joe, our cut men that are working both corners. Both of these guys bloodied up, but neither dripping right now. A great job done. Looking for another one. He got it.
George,
6 for 6.
Carlos has a switch on him, though, Mike. See that right hand deep in? He lost it. George keeps on that leg. Carlos is free and side kicks him away. Excellent defensive side kick.
This is the most punishment St-Pierre has taken in a long time.
He tagged him with that right hand.
Looking for that Anderson Silva kick, the Lyoto Machida kick. The Spider watching very closely.
Good right hand by Carlos. Nice straight left by Carlos.
Just over 3 minutes remain in our main event of the evening. First fight in nearly 19 months for St-Pierre.
Again, he goes high with that kick.
That one off the arms. Nice left hand. St-Pierre 6 for 6 in his takedowns tonight. Looking for the uppercut. Past the midway point of the 5th and final round. St-Pierre 9-0 in fights that go the distance. Stiff jab. Double jab, followed up by a big right hand. St-Pierre looking for the finish still.
Takes him down again, he's in full mount. Nope, Carlos sneaks the legs up. And George steps over, half guard. Gets a head and arm here. Let's see if he can get that leg free and mount.
Carlos got his back off the cage, Joe, but he may remain on his back for the rest of this fight if St-Pierre has his way trying to solidify the victory.
Carlos got the left hand on the hip and he's trying to sneak his left leg up. And George is pressing down on the shin. His right shin on the thigh, so I believe he's probably trying to free that leg up and perhaps move to mount.
Under 90 seconds remain.
Yeah, he's trying to mount. He's going to try to slide that leg out. Here it comes. Nope, Carlos gets it right back in.
But Carlos needs to get up and do something, Joe.
He certainly does.
7 for 7. For the man who has landed more takedowns efficiently than anyone in UFC history.
He got impatient there, Mike. He gave up his back.
Trying to slide out of trouble.
He rolls.
George is just
great roll.
He's like a huge magnet on him right now. Body.
Well, Carlos gave up his back there, and George wasn't able to capitalize. Carlos is just trying to make anything happen here.
He had to overcome the worst injury of his career and one of the most, if not the most difficult opponent. St-Pierre working his way towards victory. They are on their feet, 20,000 plus, including the longtime middleweight champion Anderson Silva.
Carlos again trying for that Kimura on the left arm. He's got
10 seconds remain. Big elbows by the champion. And they go the distance. What a fight. What a fight. greatly surpassed any expectations.
That was an outstanding fight. Carlos had his moment. He really did. He had that one moment where George was in big, big trouble, but George showed what a champion's all about. And it's really interesting because a lot of people question whether or not George would be able to get through a situation of adversity, get through a situation where he's badly hurt, and boy, he showed that tonight.
Fight replay brought to you by Bud Light. Here we go. Takedown after takedown, and a big elbow.
There's the big cut in the first that really got things going for George. And there's a nice right hand by George. But this kick in the second round, which really, the third round, which really changed things. And that was about as hurt as we've seen George St-Pierre since he lost the title to Matt Serra.
Absolutely.
And Carlos was all over him, grounding and pounding him, but George, again, utilized his wrestling, turned the tide. And here again, the wrestling of George. Over and over and over again. There's a vicious elbow from the top. And then finally, in the fifth in championships, look at that, beautiful flying jab, Superman jab, and a big right hand by George there.
Buffer has the official decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 5 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards for a decision. The judges score this contest 49-46, 50-45, and 50-45, declaring the winner by unanimous decision, Lagana, and still the undisputed UFC welterweight champion of the world, George Rush St-Pierre!
He is now, without argument, the greatest welterweight champion in UFC history. Tonight, his 17th UFC victory overall. He takes sole possession of second place behind the Hall of Famer, Matt Hughes.
The winner and still champion, George St-Pierre. How good does that feel after 18 months out of the octagon?
People talk about the ring rust. I definitely know what it is now. Credit to Carlos, he gave me my toughest fight. Amazing martial artist, and he lost, but this loss will make him a better martial artist, and he's gonna come back stronger, so give it up for Carlos Condit, ladies and gentlemen.
When you say ring rust, what specifically did you feel that you were uncomfortable with, or what aspect of your timing did you feel was off?
The feel of the octagon, the feeling of the ground, the crowd, everything, you know? And I missed that a lot. I was up, but I was thinking about it every day. I miss you guys a lot.
What about your knee? Did your knee bother you in any way?
Not at all. I would never have fought if my knee would have bothered me. I tested in training. I survived my training, so I was good for the fight.
Now, this is a tremendous victory for you, and what do you think now about the future? Do you think about defending the welterweight title? Do you think about possibly fighting Anderson Silva in a middleweight or some sort of a catchweight fight? Have you thought and given any consideration about that leading up to this fight, or have you just been completely concentrating on Carlos Condit?
I know Anderson Silva is here right now, but right now I was focusing on Carlos Condit 100%, and I need to take some vacation and think about it, to see where I want to put my career, and I want to make the best choice for myself and for the UFC and for the fans. But I want to make sure I do the right choice. I'm going to have a talk with my manager and my trainer and all my entourage about it. We'll see what's going to happen.
There was one scary moment in the third round when you got hit with that left high kick. What was going through your mind, and how badly were you hurt? Take a look at it up here. You can see it up here on the screen.
I didn't see the fight. I didn't see the kick. I think in the round before this one, I got punched in the eyes, and my eyes kind of a little bit blurry, and I never saw that kick. Carlos did a great job. He did a nice combo. I never saw it. And what you don't see, that's what is dangerous. That's what knocked me down.
This wasn't just a tremendous victory over a great fighter like Carlos Condit, but it really cemented your championship status and really showed that you could overcome adversity. Congratulations on a phenomenal victory.
Right before I'm in Montreal, je veux remercier tout le monde pour le support. J'ai été absent pendant longtemps et je veux vous remercier du fond du cœur d'être venu m'encourager ce soir. Et j'espère que ça ne sera pas la dernière fois. Merci beaucoup et passe une belle soirée.
The greatest champion in UFC welterweight history, ladies and gentlemen, George St-Pierre.
Joe will visit with Carlos Condit, who gave him a great fight tonight.
George St-Pierre just came up to you and said you're the best guy he ever fought. Is that any consolation to you right now?
You know, it's a great compliment from such a great champion, but no, not really. I'm still disappointed. I'm glad I was able to come in, fight a guy like George, and put on a good show for these guys here in Montreal, man.
What surprised you, if anything, about George in this fight?
You know, his top game was very, very good. He was able to, hold me down better than I expected. I expected to be able to, create a little bit more scrambles. Wasn't able to do that. I feel like I did pretty well. Left it in here, but I need to go back to the drawing board and, shore up some stuff for sure.
Let's take a look at the big screen. At the third round, you caught him with a nasty high kick. You had him badly, badly hurt. What was going through your mind when that kick landed?
I thought I had him, man. He was still coherent. I was going to get in there and try to put some leather on him, finish off the job. He did a good job of recovering, staying close to me, hit me with an up kick. Maybe I'll get him next time.
Carlos, it's a constant process about rebuilding and growing, and this is just going to make you a better fighter. You're one of the best in the world. This is a fantastic job you did here tonight. It was an amazing fight, and we look forward very much to seeing you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you, Montreal. Merci beaucoup. It was an honor to come here and put on a good fight for you guys. Thank you to all my fans, all my training partners, all my family, everybody who stands behind me and helps me get here to do what I love to do. Thank you.
You'll be back and you'll be even better. Ladies and gentlemen, Carlos Condit.
The greatest challenge to the throne of George St-Pierre in many years. Carlos Condit, tonight's GSP Condit fight, presented by Muscle Farm, fueling athletes safely. Faraz Sahabi, who was like a brother to GSP, celebrating the victory here tonight as he makes history, moving to 10-2 in championship fights. A hero, an icon, a legend, and still the UFC welterweight champion, George St-Pierre.
Je suis content que tu as pris des coups parce que tu as vu ce que c'est. T'es un malade, t'es un malade.
The takedowns, once again, a true key to victory for the longtime champion. He scored one in the first, one in the second, then he started to put them together multiply. Here's the second round. Takedowns again from St-Pierre in the big right hand.
The big right hand, the constant takedowns, the pressure from the top, and that's what you heard Carlos talk about, that pressure in that top game. But that big kick in the third round nearly changed the whole face of the UFC's welterweight division. George was badly hurt, but unlike in the Matt Serra fight, he overcame the situation and went on to win the remainder of the round. And then the fourth round again, the spectacular wrestling and ground and pound of George St-Pierre. And then finally, the fifth round, a lot of stand-up in the beginning, and then finally in the end, after that big right hand, in the end, takes him down again, controls him from the top position. Now, over and over again, that's been the story of George St-Pierre's victory. His sensational wrestling, his ability to control the top position.
Joe, when you look at this fight, we see one thing clearly, that Carlos Condit was the first man to take George into deep waters in years and not be able to finish him. It came in the third, but it showed the true heart, determination, and courage of a champion. GSP worked well with it. There's our French broadcasting team, JP, David Loiseau, Patrick the Predator Cote, celebrating with their brother, training partner, GSP, mom and dad, St-Pierre, having a blast right now.
Yeah, it really did, what you were saying was so true. It really did show that George really did revitalize his desire during the time off. You know, really got to rethink the game, really got to think how fortunate he is to be in the position that he's in, to be the champion of the world, and really revitalize his warrior spirit. And we saw that tonight. It was an amazing, amazing fight. I am very much looking forward to seeing what's next, whether they decide to go with the Anderson Silva super fight, or whether or not you get to see Johnny Hendricks and George St-Pierre go at it, which is equally exciting to me at this point.
With that thunderous power of Hendricks, who scored a big knockout win over Campman, he is a formidable foe as well, and a great wrestler.
The wrestling, exactly.
Yes.
That's where it really comes into play, because Johnny Hendricks is one of the best wrestlers, period, in mixed martial arts, and a physical powerhouse of a man. Very, very hard to hold down. That's a really, really intriguing fight, especially after his sensational one-punch knockout of Martin Campman. Look, there's so many great fights in the welterweight division, and of course, the possibility of a super fight at 185. There's nothing but awesomeness ahead.
And then upon the horizon, there's that kid named John Jones as well.
Well, not for George, but for Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's like that tipping point. Anderson's in the middle. He can go both ways.
Right.
There's no way George can fight John Jones, but I think George and Anderson is a possibility, and I would like to see them consider that.
What an honor it would be for us to call that fight. Take a look at our submission of the night, brought to you by Tap Out. The official lifestyle apparel of the UFC, available at tapout.com.
The pride of El Salvador, Ivan Menjivar, the crafty veteran who made his UFC debut against George St-Pierre, ladies and gentlemen. At 135 pounds he fights now, George being the 170-pound champion. Was it George's debut against Ivan Menjivar?
Yes, it was. It was George's debut against Menjivar.
Crafty technician, a real professional, Ivan Menjivar, and I love to see him get a submission like that.
Menjivar was 4-0, by the way, when he was defeated by a young man named George St-Pierre, who tonight, Joe, truly claimed the #1 spot in UFC welterweight history, defending his belt for the 7th consecutive time. What a night.
He truly is a machine, man. You know, it's such an honor to be in this era of martial arts. We're so fortunate. This is really the golden age of martial arts. We're getting to see guys like him, guys like Anderson, get to see these guys compete, guys like John Jones. It's just such a special, special time. And it's what an honor to be here in Montreal tonight, in George's hometown, to see arguably one of his most impressive victories against what I believe is his most dangerous foe. And he even said that Carlos Condit, he said it to him after the fight was over. He said, "You're the best guy I ever fought."
We're reminded once again we got the coolest job in the world.
The coolest job on earth, buddy.
Great job tonight.
Oh, my brother.
What a pleasure indeed to be here in La Belle Provence, where the hometown kid wins again. UFC 154, St-Pierre versus Condit, has been brought to you by Harley-Davidson. Check out how you can be part of the action at h-d.com/UFC. By the all-new Dodge Dart. By Rue, respect till the end. Rue.com. And by UltimatePoker.com. Visit to win your ultimate UFC experience. Here's what's coming up inside the Octagon. On Saturday, December 8th, the UFC is on Fox as Benson Henderson takes on Nate Diaz for the UFC lightweight title. Plus, Shogun Rua faces Alexander Gustafsson. BJ Penn battles Rory McDonald. And Mike Swick fights Matt Brown. Live on Fox. Coverage begins with prelims on FX at 5 p.m. Eastern. On Friday, December 14th, from the Gold Coast Convention and Exhibition Center in Gold Coast, Australia, it's UFC on FX6 as the coaches of the Ultimate Fighter, The Smashes, George Soteropoulos of Team Australia, and Ross Pearson of Team UK face off in a 5-round lightweight battle. Plus, it's the Smashes welterweight final, and Husamar Paul Harris faces Hector Lombard. Live on FX, coverage begins with prelims on Fuel TV at 6 p.m. Eastern. Tickets are still available. On Saturday, December 15th, from The Joint at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, it's the Ultimate Fighter finale, Team Carwin versus Team Nelson.
As Ultimate Fighter Season 10 competitor, Matt Mitrione steps in for Shane Carwin to fight Roy Nelson in a 5-round heavyweight war. Plus, a new Ultimate Fighter will be crowned. Live on FX, coverage begins with prelims on Fuel TV at 7 p.m. Eastern. Tickets are still available. And on Saturday, December 29th, from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Bud Light presents UFC 155 as Junior Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez square off again for the UFC Heavyweight Championship. Also, Forrest Griffin faces Phil Davis. Live on pay-per-view, coverage begins with prelims on FX at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tickets are still available.
Don't forget, immediately following tonight's event, you can watch the post-fight press conference live on UFC.com. And don't forget to tune into Fuel TV for the live UFC 154 post-fight show with Jay Glazer, Kenny Florian, Dominic Cruz, and Ariel Helwani. The executive producers. Producer is Craig Borsari. Tonight's show produced by Bruce Connell, directed by Anthony Pasquale Giordano. Rafael Dos Anjos looked better than ever in a dominant victory early at 155 over Mark Bocek. Then it was middleweight time. Filthy Tom Lawler and Montreal's own Francis Carmon. A back-and-forth battle it was, and a split decision win just narrowly for Carmon. Welterweight time, and the big rig once again delivers the big left like a Mack truck as he knocks out Martin Kampmann. Johnny Hendricks is in prime position for his shot at a championship. And then, in our main event of the evening, Carlos Condit, the natural-born killer, faced off against the greatest welterweight of all time, the French-Canadian George Rush St-Pierre. Anderson Silva watching closely. Early a big right hand, a good jab, and some ground and pound. The elbow cut him open. But then in the third, Carlos Condit nearly shocked the world with the head kick that staggered him. But GSP persevered. For my partner Joe Rogan, Mike Goldberg saying so long until next time. We see you right back here inside the Octagon.